Welcome to Budget Space. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to call it story time. So, this video, this story, I should say, the story is about Asus and the Tinkerboard S. Now, there was an absolutely amazing rep who helped me out when I needed it the most after exhausting all of my patience and resources and time to try to figure out a simple issue. Now, he's just amazing. He's just amazing. Asus is just very lucky to have him. And full disclosure too, the only information I'm going to give you about him at all is that his name is Tom. And that's the only information that I was given. I asked for permission from him to use. So the most I can probably tell you is that he's extremely knowledgeable and extremely just very friendly, very cool, very down to earth, and very good to talk to. So this whole ordeal started last year, Christmas. Might have been January. I think I waited a couple weeks to try the board. So the board, this is the Tinkerboard S. Let me give you context on that first. The Tinkerboard S is an 80 like an 81 to $86 board depending where you get it. So this board is literally got enough power to be considered a full-fledged computer, and it is a full-fledged computer in its own right. It is an absolutely beautiful piece of technology, and I'm so happy that Asus made it. If you're going to buy a Tinkerboard, don't buy the regular Tinkerboard. Just buy the Tinkerboard S, buy one or two of those if you need it for a project, and figure it out. Because the S has so many additional features in its own respect that the just normal Tinkerboard doesn't have, that to me, I think the normal Tinkerboard will feel like a Raspberry Pi, and Raspberry Pis are very underwhelming when it comes to power. So let me give you an idea. The whole story was, in a nutshell, that I was trying to get Android on an SD card, because originally I was thinking about using Android on an SD card and then just kind of hanging it out, trying it on the SD card. I just wanted to test it. Then I'm like, well, this can't be that hard. I got Debian to run from the SD card. I've gotten Raspberry Pi to run from the same SD cards. So I'm just like, okay, cool. So I did the same thing that I would do to put Raspberry Pi on an SD card, but it didn't work. So I spent January, February, March, April. I think I went that far. I think I went up to March, but I feel like I went into April. And then the first week of May or whatever, trying to get this working with the support team who you get when you call the phone, and then they said they give you to a level 2 or whatever. Those are not the guys you ever want to deal with. The guys you want to deal with are, how I always say it, the guys that aren't allowed to pick up the phones or don't pick up the phones. Those are the guys you want to talk to in almost every company. The guys that can do something, or the guys that want to actually help you and can actually help you with knowledge, information, refunds, getting your money back, working with getting a reimbursement or getting a part or making a bad situation right. In almost any company are the guys that aren't allowed to pick up the phones, or the guys that don't pick up the phones at the call center level. Let's call it that. So I called. Now this is how it started. I called Asus. I asked for help, and then it just went downhill fast from there, because over that 3 or 4 months, they passed my case off to about 15 to 17 different people. It felt like, and nobody could give me a simple answer, and I had to keep explaining and explaining and explaining to those 17 different people in different emails, and I just got sick and tired of repeating myself. So I think it was the end of May. Yeah, middle of May. I think it was middle of May. It might have been the end of April, middle of May that I said, you know what? I'll give it a try. I'll try again. Let's see. Let's see if shit hits the fan. Let's see. If not, no harm off my back. No skin off my back. Nothing lost. Nothing gained. So I called up. I followed the same procedures. I'm like, this is what's wrong. I explained that I've talked to X number of people over X number of months, and that I'm X number of pissed off through X number of pissed off. Well, what I mean by that is I'm essentially at the point that I was just pissed off to the point that I'm was just ready to be done with it and return my board back to Amazon. So once once they heard all of that, they made it a point to bump my case to the R&D team, and then the R&D team did their own research, got back to me, and they said, "Hey, well, we can't help you directly. So we're going to give you this guy here in this team." And that's how I met Tom. Tom was and is an absolutely phenomenal person. He's a phenomenal guy. He wants to help you. He wants to do everything right, and I have no problem putting in a good word for Tom any day of the week when he helps me out, because he makes a point. Yes, you know he's really, really busy and that he's a busy man, and I respect that. But he took the time for a month and a half to help me every day, at least for about a good 6 hours every day, 7 hours every day, back and forth through email, to try to figure out what was wrong with the problem. It turned out that, I think it's called a jumper. It turned out that there's a little jumper on the board that is what looks like just a tiny piece of rubber with contacts on the inside, and that controls 3 or 4 different functions of the board from the 2 or 4 pins. I'm trying to visualize in my head as I'm saying it. And those pins lock you out of booting from the SD card. They allow you to boot to the SD card. They can overload your system if you don't put the jumper back in. You can just fry your system with not putting the jumper back in. That's another thing. You could lock it out so there's functions, there's no functions. It's the manual. The manual gives you an idea, but the manual that comes in the book is just garbage. I'm sorry, guys. That's the one thing I will say is the manual that comes in the box is garbage. So once we got that sorted out, and we figured out that it was the jumper, it was pretty straightforward to get Linux. Sorry, it was pretty straightforward to get Android 7.1, 7.2.1 installed on the SD card and running. And we got it up and running within a matter of hours, because I took my time and I made sure I got everything correct, and I did everything. I tried to flash the card like 3 or 4 times just to make sure I got it all. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to start playing with the board, see if I can force it to get the computer to allow me to boot onto the board, and then the SD card will be backup storage. So that's exactly what I did. I figured it out. It was a lot of guesswork, but I figured it out. So then we get to explaining it to Tom and all of this, and I mean, I went from a going to return customer to customer for life. Now, if I get a motherboard or I get anything more, I want to get it from Asus if it is possible, because I mean, when this is the thing, when you get people. Now, I also I'm going through something with Square Trade right now too, but that's another thing in itself. But when you get people who want to help you and are willing to spend that time with you, you're it makes you feel good and gives you a sense of relief, accomplishment, pride to have somebody want to help you and somebody who wants to actually do the right thing. So Tom as somebody who was helping me and everything, just fantastic guy. If you ever run into him or he ever decides to acknowledge in the comments that it's him, or if he's allowed to, tell him how much you love him, because he's a good guy. He does a good job, and I mean, Asus is lucky to have him. So I'm not going to go into any more detail at all. It was just more I wanted to make a video of point A to point B, or point A to Tom, I guess, because this whole video, I think honestly, I'm just gonna go on record saying it. Let me put it this way: if I got to the point, if I knew Tom in real life, right? If I knew him, if he was a friend of mine, I'd buy him a few beers, buy him one or two beers for doing the amazing job he did and going out of his way to help me and to explain to me in layman's terms what was going on, what I was doing wrong, and try to diagnose it with me. Now, diagnosing anything over emails is extremely hard, so I'll give him a little credit there. So, if you made it to the end of the video and you've listened to the ranting for what feels like forever, and if by some miracle, Tom, you're listening to this, thank you again, my friend. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I look forward to talking to you, working with you in the future if I ever do. And if I ever get any more Asus products, which I know I will in it for a fact at some point, probably this year or next year. I mean, you're a good person. You're a good man. Do a good job, and thank you. This has been Budget Space. Subscribe, and yeah, you know the deal. Subscribe and the bell.